All right, and we are live. Hello, and welcome to the Bloodstream. Let me make a couple of announcements here before we get the ball rolling. We will open up. We will open up the phone line, so to speak, for a Q&A here during our stream tonight. I've made the invite link available if you want to actually jump onto the stream and ask Jamie or myself a question. That link is right now available to my patrons and channel members, and we'll make it available to everyone else in the very near future. If you have a question for Jamie, try to hold on. Typed out question, try to hold on to those until the end of the stream, or send those via a super chat. That way I can keep track of them, and of course that helps to support the channel. So without further ado, my guest tonight is a editor, a composer, and a director, and just an all-around really good guy, a friend to the channel. If you're familiar with my channel, you've seen him on several streams in the past, several really fun streams, but this is the first time we're doing one-on-one. Mr. Jamie Blinks. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Justin, good to see you, brother.
Good to see you, too. It's been a while. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, likewise, man. Hope everything's going well over there. We're just still in lockdown here in Melbourne, so plenty of time on my hands.
Well, I'm glad you're spending some of that time here with us. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure, mate. I always like seeing you. Always have a great time on your channel, and we always have a good chat.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For everybody watching, if you wouldn't mind sharing the stream on your social media platform of choice, I would certainly appreciate that. We've got some old and new faces in the chat tonight. Robert Long, Jose Sanchez, my buddy Dave Vanderhoff, Borderline 11, Phantasm 81, Rhiannon. Hello, Rhiannon. How are you? Richard Skarinki, my buddy Nico, Keith, Captain Halloween, and thank you, Darren, for becoming a channel member. I appreciate that, man. Very kind of you. Well, like I was saying before, we've done several streams in the past, really fun streams. We did live commentaries for Valentine, for Urban Legend. We did a stream with Don Coscarelli, you and I, Peter Brackey, and Don Coscarelli, which was absolutely fantastic. But that was so cool, yeah. But I wanted to get you, just the two of us, so that we could talk about our mutual love of horror and maybe go a little more in depth on some things that we didn't have a chance to discuss in our group streams.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah, right on, man. I love Ozploitation movies, and Australia has such a rich history of Ozploitation. Yeah. What were some of the I've gotten to know you really well over the past couple of years, and I know with certainty, A, that you're a really, really nice guy, and B, you genuinely love this genre. You love horror. It's in your blood. It's the genre you want to work in. You're not using the genre to springboard so that you can, get
your something else. No, I'm at home with what I do. You know?
Yeah, you're using horror so you can get your period piece drama epic off the ground. You love this genre. So where did what sparked that passion, that love for the genre? Do you remember what movie it was?
I do. I remember very clearly. My whole family's involved in, like, you've seen those like surf lifesaving clubs in Australia where they all like the lifesavers on the beach and all that. My whole family into that, right? All my aunts and uncles, they met because of this club, and they used to have movie nights there on 16mm in the clubhouse. They would play these movies, and I think I was 9 or 10. It was 1980, so I must have been 9. I must have been 10, maybe. Just turned 10. And they took me to see a movie, a horror film, And I had no idea. I'd never seen a horror film before. I'd seen movies before, and I'd seen Superman and all that stuff as a kid, and I loved all that. But I'd never seen a horror film. And I sit down in this cold clubhouse in the middle of winter, and John Carpenter Fog unspools on the screen, like the first time I've seen a horror film, and it freaked me out, man. My cousin and I were there. He was the same age as me. We both were just like absolutely traumatized by this movie. But it was like going on one of those roller coasters where you, like, after you've done the ride, you want to go straight back on and do it all over again. I just remember we left it's going to sound like a made up story, but it's true. We left the clubhouse, they opened the doors, and this enormous fog bank had rolled in all over the beach. So it was like the perfect way to see this movie. And we both went back home and had very, very poor sleep. And then later that year, I caught on television, they were running Halloween on TV, and with commercial breaks and everything. But I remember watching that on my own and being absolutely terrified, and then realizing that it actually was Halloween, because we didn't really celebrate Halloween in Australia. And that one, but I recognized the names. I recognized Deborah Hill's name, and I recognized Jamie Lee Curtis's name and Carpenter's name. I was like, they must make all the horror films, they're the first two I've seen. So what did I watch next? I think it was the Amityville Horror was the next one I saw. And that, I remember we didn't have a VCR, so we rented The Fog, a couple of years later, and someone had it. So I recorded it onto an audio cassette so I could just listen to it, like I couldn't watch it, but I could at least listen to the movie. So I knew that film backwards and forwards. I still do. I know every sound effect. I know every line of dialogue. It unspools just like a series of familiar images and sounds to me now. It's like it's barely a movie anymore to me. But because it just got burned in on my brain. And then I think once we got the VCR finally, it was just paradise for me. I just watched everything, everything that I could rent as a young kid. I've a great little mum and pop video store that were pretty liberal about what they'd let me rent. It was like, no, you can't have I Spit on Your Grave, but you can have, Deadly Blessing. So they'd let me watch all this stuff. And then I burned through that video store. I think I joined every video store within a 15-kilometer radius of my house, and I just watched everything I could. And
God bless mom and pop video stores, man. That's a bygone era. But yeah, it
really is. Well, at least you and I live in a video or work out of a video store, right? So it's a close thing. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah. Well, you mentioned a couple of John Carpenter films, and I know you're a huge fan of John Carpenter, as am I, as am so many who are watching this tonight. What do you think? And not just as a filmmaker, but also as a composer. And I definitely want to talk to you about your work as a composer. What do you think it is about Carpenter's films that have been so impactful?
I think it's because he has such a strong style. I mean, you can tell a Carpenter film, like I could tell one of his movies, when I was seeing them for the first time, it was like I watched Assault, and it's like, you just know it's a Carpenter movie. It's the music, it's his widescreen compositions. Mm-hmm. It's how he keeps things simple. Like, Carpenter's not a show off as a filmmaker. He's a classic. Everything Carpenter does is structured because he's sending you towards a particular place. He wants to get a specific reaction out of you, or he wants to convey information in a particular kind of way. He's really good. I mean, he's a great filmmaker to study because there's a lot of stuff going on in his filmmaking. He makes it look really easy, and it's not. What he's doing is not easy. There's a lot of people trying to imitate Halloween. There's a reason that they all kind of, fall short of that film, because he's just got it going on. He knows what he's doing. It's in everything that he does. It's like the music's a huge part of it, but there's an attitude to a Carpenter movie. There's a particular female type in a Carpenter movie. There's an anti-authoritarian streak running through Carpenter's movies too. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. As a kid, I think I was really drawn to him too because I love the music so much. I mean, I didn't have a piano at home, but my grandmother had a piano, and I'd learned the Halloween theme. And I just as a young kid, I was just kind of obsessed with John Carpenter. I still kind of am. I just think he's still a fantastic filmmaker. All of my films credits are all in Albertus typeface. It's not an accident. It's like, that's my little tip of the hat to say everything I'm doing is because this guy kind of, set me on that path. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of the horror master.
I think you definitely nailed. There is an attitude to his films, and part of that attitude is like just this really dark kind of cynicism.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, and that's something. And like you
You,
said, if you could be channel surfing at 3 o'clock in the morning, nearly blackout drunk, and you scan past a John Carpenter movie, you know that's a John Carpenter movie. Even through the fog,
correct.
you go back, you know that's a John Carpenter movie.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's the look, the sound, like you said, that wide screen, and
It's the Halloween 3 pad that I'm trying to perfect. I'm trying to get that just right,
There you go.
It's got that bass that's sort of just eating itself. It's great. I love it.
It's great. Yeah, you just feel that. You can feel it surging through you. Yeah, so good.
Yeah. Those scores are great. I mean, I remember the first time I got my hands on those scores. I must have worn the record out. I got my LP first, and yeah, love that stuff.
Yeah. What about Ozploitation films? What were some of your favorite Ozploitation films growing up?
I really loved the work of Richard Franklin and Brian Trenchard Smith was a real kind of inspiration as a young kid, because no one was doing that crazy kind of batshit action stuff that Brian was doing. Turkey Shoot and The Man from Hong Kong and all the stuff he did with Grant Page. I loved him for all that. And then one day I was watching. This is between Urban Legend and Valentine. I'm sitting there with my wife and my assistant buddy Edgar Pablos. You see him in the Urban Legend documentary. He was my assistant on Urban Legend. He's one of my dearest friends. We were watching Gladiator for the second time in, I think it was the Cinerama Dome or something. And we were sitting there, and I was talking to Edgar about Valentine, and I was going to go off to Vancouver and do this movie. And this dude turns around in front of me, and says, "Sounds like you're in the business." And it sounds like I detect an Australian accent. I'm like, who is this guy? And he's put his hand out. It's like, Brian Trenchard Smith, lovely to meet you. And I was like Wayne's World for me. I'm like, the Brian Trenchard Smith. And he said to me, it was just so nice to meet a fan from Australia. He said he left Australia because he was like a big fish in a small pond. And he came to the United States and became plankton, is what he said. Because he made a series of movies in the States, and Brian's just worked constantly, and he was just amazing. And Richard Franklin was a dear friend. He went to the same high school that I went to. So I went. My first year at that school was '82, and that was the year Psycho 2 had just come out. And I was dying to see it. I really wanted to see Psycho 2. And then somehow I learned, I think it was from a librarian at the school, that director actually went to Haileybury College. It's like he came from your school. And so I've looked him up and I've done everything, and I realized he went to film school at the same time as John Carpenter. He was there with, in the George Lucas era. He was there as part of that group. And it inspired me. I thought, wow, this guy came from my school, went to university with John Carpenter, and then he's doing Psycho 2. And I thought, well, if he can do it, maybe I can do it too. And he gave me a lot of inspiration. So when in my final year at film school, I made VHS copies of my short film Silent Number, which is on YouTube, and I dropped a copy off to Richard's house. He lived only 20 minutes from where I was living. I dropped a copy off in his letterbox with a ticket to the graduate screenings, hoping that he might want to come along. And I didn't hear anything. And then opening night, graduation, someone's tapping me on the shoulder saying, "There's Richard Franklin's looking for you in the foyer." Are you kidding? And he was there to see the film with me. He said he watched the tape, he loved it, and he thought he should show up and lend some support. I'm like, "Are you kidding?" And he sat next to me. We watched all the graduate films, and my film was sort of towards the end. And Richard watched it with me, and it was one of the proudest moments of my life, getting to sit next to this guy and tell him all the stuff. Like, I went to Haileybury, and you were the guy that inspired me. I can't believe that you're here for the graduate screening thing. He wrote me a letter, this beautiful letter about the film, which I used to get my first job. I showed it to an employer who hired me as an editor. based on Richard's letter. My second job after that was working with Fred Skepsey, great Australian filmmaker Fred Skepsey, Barbarossa and Channel Jimmy Blacksmith and 6 Degrees of Separation, all that stuff, Roxanne. And I'm working with Fred, and my very first job working at Fred's company was to go and work on a commercial, and Richard was directing the commercial. So we sort of our paths intertwined a lot, and we always stayed good friends. And when we interviewed him for the Not Quite Hollywood documentary, he passed away only maybe a month or two later. And Mark Hartley and I were helping his wife pack up all his stuff from the storage locker, and we made sure we kept all these little pieces that have since gone onto Blu-rays for road games and stuff, just little archival things that might have gotten thrown out. Mark and I went through all of it to make sure Richard's legacy is preserved as much as possible, because we both loved him. Not Quite Hollywood is dedicated to him, and I don't think I would have become a filmmaker if Richard Franklin hadn't kind of given me that example. So, and that friendship and that support and all the other stuff. So, I've never forgotten that he did that for me, and I always think it's important to try and do that for other filmmakers who are coming through. I mean, back in 2002, I think it was 2002. Whenever Saw came out, they had a screening of Saw in Melbourne, and I got invited along to that. And Lee Whannell, the writer and star of Saw, had interviewed me when I did Urban Legend for a TV show in Australia that he was hosting. And he wanted to know all the story about how I got that film and had made that trailer for I Know What You Did Last Summer. And he came out to the car park after the thing as I was leaving. He wanted to just grill me for information on this trailer. It was so cool. I could tell this guy was like, he wanted to make films. And then I go and see Saw, and James Wan and Lee, and they saw me in the audience, and they said, look, we used your idea, the trailer, getting the trailer made to get Saw made. And James Wan came out after the screening, and he was following me. He wanted to, can you give me some more advice? Yeah, I'm like, so James is don't direct the sequels, go and make other movies, and like now James Wan's, the king of horror. Proud of him. The most beautiful, sweetest guy. When they say it couldn't happen to a nicer person, they're talking about James Wan. Like he's just a terrific bloke, and I'm just so pleased for him. It's really great.
Yeah, I think he may owe you some residuals. Actually, I do.
I should have asked for 10%. I really should have asked for 10%.
You should have. Yeah. I do want to mention Todd Farmer's in the chat tonight, hanging out with us.
Oh, Todd, yeah, fabulous.
Yeah.
I love Mr. Farmer. How's he doing? Hey, there he is.
Yep. He's hanging out with us tonight. Very cool to see Todd in the chat.
That's great. That's awesome.
But yeah, I love Richard Franklin too. I mean, Patrick, Road Games, and what he did with Psycho 2 is just phenomenal. I know people who prefer Psycho 2 over Psycho. I would rather rewatch Psycho 2 to Psycho any day.
I just watched Psycho on 4K actually, and it really did make me appreciate Psycho 2. We should actually mention, because we were talking about Carpenter earlier, Dean Cundy, right? Shot Psycho 2 as well as all those great Carpenter movies. Dean Cundy is one of the greatest cinematographers of all time. Like he shot The Thing and Back to the Future and Jurassic Park, and it goes on. Roger Rabbit. One of the true masters of, and like I think Psycho 2, a lot of the credit you can give to the look of that movie is to the great Dean Cundy, and he should not be overlooked.
I love that shot in Psycho 2 where the camera comes down the side of the house, and you see those two go in through the.
I tried to reference that shot in Urban Legend, right? There's a shot where the two girls are coming along to Stanley, and the camera comes in. That shot actually ended up getting cut shorter. It actually started much higher. I had a crane on top of another crane, and we started at the very top of the building, looking straight down. It was the Psycho 2 shot, and that was my homage to Richard Franklin. So only the last 3/4 of that shot is in the movie, unfortunately, but that was my Psycho 2 moment. Yeah, and I love that shot. I know exactly the shot you're talking about.
Yeah, that whole sequence with the two down in the root cellar, and there's the great scene where the guy's trying to get out, but he can't get out the window, and you just
the foggy window, and Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Oh,
Jerry
so
Goldsmith music is just magnificent in that movie. I think
yeah.
Psycho 2 is a little mini masterpiece, way better than it had any right to be at the time. I think no one had very high expectations. It was going to be a TV movie or something at one point.
It
And
was,
it's a
yeah.
masterpiece. I must have watched Psycho 2. I must have seen that film 40, 45 times at least
Yeah.
in my life.
Yeah. And if anybody out there has not watched Patrick or Road Games got a release from Scream Factory recently, or I think last year. It's definitely worth your time. Stacy Keach, Jamie Lee Curtis, road thriller, great
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, there's a great Indicator version that's really, really good, worth picking up.
Mhm.
They've taken that Indicator one's come off the internet. All the other versions have come off prints, like the Scream Factory and the Umbrella version. They're okay, but they come off of print. The Indicator's the one to get. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's the one. Yeah.
You know, you mentioned Silent Number, and I really love that little film. I think that's just a really rock solid, wonderful little thriller. And you can definitely see, your sort of style in its infancy with that movie.
Trying to create a style. Yeah, it was. We see the deal at film school was you'd work on everyone's film, so you'd do something on you'd be the camera operator on someone else. So I learned a lot of lessons watching my friends make movies. They would all shoot things in multiple locations, and it was like they spent half their time getting to these things and setting up, and then their shooting time getting reduced. And I thought, that's crazy. I'm going to set my thing in one location, and I'm going to use all that travel time setting up lights, setting up rain, making it just look as Hollywood as I possibly could. I had a feeling this might be the only chance you get to make a short film in a very long time. So this better be a really good one. But it should be as good as you can possibly make it, because it might end up becoming a calling card to get a real job. So I wanted it to look good.
Well, it looks good, and it's got that ending is very sad. The poor little boy, he's so cold he can't feel his legs. Yeah, that was one where Jeremy, I said, Jeremy, do you want to watch this with me? I said, it's a short movie, so you can sit still for a few minutes. So he sat and watched it with me, and at the end of it, we kind of paused, and he went, sad. I said, yeah, it's a little sad.
It's sad. It is, and it's tragic, and I think that's what kind of gives it that kind of emotional kick that it needs at the end. It needs a payoff. I think all short films should have kind of a twist at the end or a payoff. It's just a reward for sitting through it. So yeah, it was very much modeled on like a Alfred Hitchcock Presents or a Twilight Zone or a Outer Limits story. I just wanted to do something that was clearly a genre piece that kind of was staking my flag in the ground. This is who I am. This is what I want to do. And you can kind of see. It's funny. I never showed Silent Number to James Chrysanthus when we made Urban Legend, but it was just through our conversations and I guess the kind of films I was making him watch. Making him watch Catherine Bigelow's Blue Steel, and we watched Elm Street 4 because of the camera moves. I wanted. There's this particular kind of vibe I want to create in this movie without even referring back to Silent Number. But it's funny when you look at Silent Number and you can tell this, they obviously come from the same twisted brain.
But yeah, really a really good, simple, straightforward. And I don't mean simple. I mean like, basically one character, a telephone, and a voice
simple,
on the other end.
It was like there's a lesson I learned from Carpenter. A lot of interviews. Keep it simple, Don't. And the lighting was very much inspired by Suspiria. I said to my DP who shot Storm Warning and Long Weekend, to light everything through the glass. Like we had hoses drenching water through these big plate glass windows. I said all the lighting has to come from behind the glass, so everything has that beautiful rain, that mottled rain effect. So it made it look like a lot more expensive than it was. So some good little simple tricks in that one.
Yeah, and it is on YouTube. I would encourage anybody to go and watch it. Silent Number. Check it out for sure.
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
Check it out.
But it was a little bit of a calling card for you because didn't it get you on to Neil Moritz's radar?
Yeah, it was. Well, actually, what got me on Neil's radar was the trailer I made for him, which he did last summer. So The guy who became my manager, a wonderful man, Simon Miller, who was working at Propaganda Films at the time. That was where David Fincher and Michael Bay were doing commercials, and they'd made Wild at Heart and I think The Game with Michael Douglas. They had a management division where they were looking for young talent. So he came out to Australia and looked at all the short films from the my film school, and he liked silent numbers. So he ended up becoming my manager and sending me scripts. And one of the scripts I got was Kevin Williamson's Scream. The Weinsteins looked at Silent Number. It kind of helped that it was about a girl on a phone. You know, there was that whole thing going on with that movie. Didn't get Scream, obviously. It went to the right guy. And then the next script I got was I Know What You Did Last Summer. So when I was working for Fred Skepsy, I had access to a bunch of short ends of 35 millimeter in the fridge, like leftover bits of reels and things. Like there was maybe 2 minutes here and 3 minutes there of film. So we just used all that to shoot this trailer for I Know What You Did Last Summer. I just went through the script and picked out all the things that you might use in a trailer if you chop the whole movie. And that's what got me on Neil's radar, was that. He said, I've never seen anyone crazy enough to go and spend their own money to make a trailer for a film that they haven't been hired to direct. And Kevin Williams, and they liked it. And, you know, it's so it got there, unfortunately, too late. They'd already hired Jim Gillespie, and that train left the station. But Neil said, I'll remember you for the next one. And he was true to his word. He called me up with Urban Legend. It was yeah, I've told the story a million times. Yeah.
But they took elements from your trailer and put it in the actual movie.
Yeah. Well, Steve Merkovich cut I Know What You Did Last Summer, and he worked with me on Valentine. And you know, it's like I look at that movie and I'm like, man, there's no way they didn't see this. You know, there's definitely some similarities. I don't know if they really did or not, but it certainly, you know, maybe Jim and I just interpreted the screenplay in a similar way. But yeah, it felt like, you know, when I watched the movie, I'm like, wow, you know. We did this already.
Yeah. And yeah, and you know, we've done live commentaries for Urban Legend and Valentine, so it kind of seems redundant to ask you questions about Urban Legend and Valentine, since we've already gone really in depth on those in the past. But what really stands out to me about Urban Legend is how young you were when you got that gig. Do you think a young filmmaker in their early 20s could get that same kind of opportunity today? You know, big studio.
I'd hope so. I'm not sure if it would or not. I mean, it took extraordinary amount of belief from Neil Moritz, from Gina Matthews, and from the studio to hire me based on what I'd shown them. But they could tell I was just so passionate about wanting to do that film. And I mean, I wasn't faking any of that stuff. I was so hungry to make that movie, and they just saw it in me. I think this kid wants to do it. Let's give him that shot. So yeah, it was one of those wonderful things where you have the gift of ignorance, because you don't know what you can't do at that point. You haven't had an experience of making a film before, so you just throw yourself into everything, and it's amazing when you don't have all that kind of, you don't have to put limits on yourself, and you don't second guess yourself. You just jump in and get it done, and you know, that was a really great experience. It was one of the happiest chapters of my life making that movie. I really loved that, and I love the people that I worked with. They're all still dear friends. It was the best. Yeah.
Yeah. I just kind of put myself in your shoes, early 20s. Like, okay, so here's, you know, you've got Mike Medavoy behind you. You've got Neil Moritz behind you. You've got this great cast of young actors, future Oscar winner, and you've got, you know, icons like Robert Englund and Brad Dourif. Now go make this movie. I would have been, I'd been a wreck. I don't know if I could have done it. You know, they'd had to like prop me up and, you know, put the microphone in front of my mouth.
I certainly had moments. I definitely had moments of sheer terror. I just remember some mornings waking up just with this kind of butterflies, just this and this sort of wall of nerves that you have to kind of push through and just go, okay, the driver's here. He's going to take you to the set, get your shit together, because in 15 minutes you're going to be there are a lot of questions coming your way.
Mm-hmm.
You better have the right answers to them, and you better have all your thoughts together, because there's a lot of stuff you've got to accomplish today. So, and that lasted probably the first couple of days, and then after that, I just couldn't wait to get to set every day. The crew was great. We all got along fantastic. There was a really lovely atmosphere on that set. It probably helped a lot because it was my first movie, and they all kind of knew it was my first movie. And no one was kind of watching to see if I was going to screw up. They were all kind of watching out to see how they could help me, And if I didn't know something, I'd just go and ask, the DP or whoever it was. I want to do this. I'm not quite sure how to go about it the best way. I'm thinking of this kind of shot, and then, yeah, it was wonderful. They all just got behind me, and But by halfway through that movie, the crew was so loyal to me. If I needed to go over time to get a shot, no problem. For you, Jamie, we'll do it. Let's just get the shot. Let's make it great. And that was awesome. I just I'm eternally grateful to all those people for supporting me during that movie, because it was wonderful, but it's also very, very scary, because you're responsible for it was a lot of money. I never worked with budget anything like that, so I just didn't want to let Mike Medavoy down. I didn't want to let Gina and Neil and Michael McDonald down. I didn't want to let anyone down. So just tried to do the best job we could.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you certainly did.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. What a lot of people may not know about you is you've done a lot of composing for films. You've composed a lot of you've composed for more movies than you've directed. You've got You've got quite a body of work as a composer.
I've done commercials, and God, I've been writing music for years and years, so I love that stuff. Yeah, and that all comes back to my love of John Carpenter. It was the first thing I taught myself. I'm self-taught on the piano, so the first thing I learned was Halloween, and discovered I had an aptitude for music. I could go to a movie, hear the theme song, I could come back home and just play it by ear. In my head, I know what the intervals are. Like, that's a third, that's a fourth, whatever. I can figure out the music. So I've always been lucky I had that musical kind of bent as well, because I definitely wanted to score my own movies. It just took a while to learn enough to say, okay, now I can actually score something for myself, and then be confident enough to score something for somebody else. And if they want changes, be a good enough composer to know what that means and write something else and not be locked into a particular thing. I mean, the most fun I ever had was scoring stuff for my buddy Mark Hartley. The two documentaries I scored for him were Electric Boogaloo and Machete Maidens Unleashed. Doing the score for Electric Boogaloo was the most fun I've ever had in my life. One day I'd be doing ninjas. The next day I'd be doing Chuck Norris or Charlie Bronson. Then Franco Zeffirelli stuff, and then back to some more ninjas. It was hilarious, and doing all the Chuck Norris movies was so much fun. I just had a ball doing it.
Oh yeah. So composing was something that you kind of wanted to do from the beginning, along with filmmaking.
Yeah, it was. It was always something that I was. All my little films I made prior to Silent Number, all the stuff I made with my friends, I scored all that stuff, and just I used to deliver junk mail for 2 years so I could save up to buy my first synthesizer. So I was obsessed with music as well. So that all that stuff kind of intertwined all along the way. I never wanted to score my first two movies. I was considering scoring Valentine until Steve Merkovich talked me out of it. He'd done 3 films with John Carpenter, and he said, look, when John started scoring, we gained a composer and we lost the director because he's off doing the music.
Right.
And he said, we don't have the time for you to do that. You don't have an Alan Howarth where you can go and set up in his studio. I would have to start from scratch. I was in Vancouver. We'd have to score it in Vancouver and build a little mini studio to do it. It didn't make sense. So we got Don Davis to do it. So when Storm Warning came around, it was when it was finally time to, score my own movie.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of Storm Warning, the score for it and for a film called Crawlspace that you did the score for is now available from Howling Wolf Records. So
wonderful Howling Wolf Records. They were so amazing. There was a composer I met on Twitter this year. I only joined Twitter really in February this year. I've had an account since 2013 that I never used. I only activated it really in February. And I met all these amazing people straight away. And this one guy asked me about Storm Warning, and is the score available? I said, no, it's never come out. And So I should call Howling Wolf Records and see if they're interested in putting it out. They do all that kind of indie horror stuff. And I thought, oh, cool, I'll send them an email. And I got an email back the next day from Howling Wolf Records saying, we've been trying to find you for 10 years. We wanted to put this score out back in 2011. He showed me the emails that he's sending around, people trying to track me down. Because without social media, I haven't been that easy to kind of find in Melbourne, Australia. So it was amazing. They put the score out, and we've got plans to do Long Weekend next. And then after that, thinking that maybe we should do a concept album together. So my idea for a concept album is I want to collaborate with some other composers and do stuff in the style of John Carpenter and Alan Howarth, as though they kept writing music after 1988. They didn't break up after they lived. They kept doing some stuff. What would it sound like? And yeah, do a whole album of that stuff. So that'll be really fun. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, that will be fun. Yeah, that'll be really cool. Can you describe for us how good it felt after Urban Legend premiered? Again, it's your first film. It's a hit at the box office. Did you have time to enjoy that, or were you kind of like already on to the next film?
I had a little bit of time. I mean, it was nice to come back here and have the premiere in Australia with all my friends, and all my high school teacher, who was so inspirational to me, is still one of my favorite people in the world. He came along, and my old boss that I worked with before Fred, I worked with this really miserable guy who was made me feel like shit every day. And I just invited him along, and turned out all right. Didn't live down to your expectations. No, it was nice. I had some really nice times in Australia, but pretty much after that, I was in development on a new film with Phoenix. So that period between Urban Legend and Valentine, I was busy. Developing stuff. Went over on meetings on lots of movies with MGM. Had lots of adventures in Hollywood between those two films before finally settling on doing Valentine next. I'll do another slash film.
Did Urban Legend kind of spoil you on not that it was an easy gig to get, but spoil you on like, you'll be supported, you'll have a great cast, you'll have a great crew? Did you think like, oh, this must be how all movies get made?
No, I wish that it would be like that, but I kind of knew this was special. I knew that no other film was going to be like that one. I mean, Valentine was great fun, and the only thing that was different was the studio's mindset about the movie. Like Phoenix, we're cool with putting out a slasher film, no problems. No, with Valentine, with Warner Brothers, it was a different story because of Columbine and because of The Matrix. The same executive team that had been on Matrix were on Valentine, and they'd copped all that blowback from Columbine because of the kids with the trench coats. Now they're coming out with another movie about a man who's murdering the women he went to high school with, and he's dressed in a trench coat. And they, understandably, it was a hot potato over there for them. They had this great soundtrack. They were too terrified to advertise the soundtrack in certain time slots. And Warner Brothers at that time hadn't made a whole lot of horror films. The William Castle stuff maybe sort of came around about the same time, but before that, you don't see a whole lot of horror films with that Warner Brothers shield in front of them, right? They just didn't do that genre. So it was a different experience, and I'd never had anyone. I thought all the censorship's going to come from the MPAA. I've never had a studio censor me. They actually cut the movie even after my director's cut was given an R rating. They cut it further. I thought unnecessarily, and this is right before we enter the Saw era with more blood and guts than you could put on a screen. They thought my film was incredibly violent, and I thought by my standards it's not that. There's violence in the movie, but a lot of it's kind of implied. I mean, it's implied very graphically, but it's not a gore fest. You wouldn't call Valentine a gore fest by any, even in the uncut version. You saw Katie Heigl's throat get cut in my uncut version. You saw a little bit more of the glass going through Hetty Barres in the shower screen. It was just a little bit more nasty than the version that went out. And I was really upset. I called everybody at Warner Brothers all the way up to Alan Horn at the very top to try and get them to change their mind. I said, it's going to become like a violent episode of Sex in the City if you cut all the violence. This is a horror film, It's like it's got to upset some people. What are we doing if we're not making a horror film? So that I didn't get anywhere with them. So I just found my next movie. Not that my movies don't exist because I want to just revel in gory effects. But I thought the next film I do, I'm not going to be censored no matter what. I'll figure out, a scenario where I'm going to make a film, and that just won't happen. So I was involved in other projects that didn't kind of pan out for one reason or another. I ended up in Australia, and Storm Warning became the next film.
What's for those of us who aren't in the business, what's the development process like? Is it, because it doesn't sound like a creative process, it just sounds like a really frustrating process. What was your experience like?
Movie.
Right. What about in between after Urban Legend, before Valentine, when you had those projects in the works?
Yeah. Well, I was involved in a project. Like MGM flew me over for a meeting on a film. I had one meeting with the head of MGM where he was screaming at the writers, and I immediately decided I will not work with these people. Not the experience I wanted to have right after having had such a good experience with Phoenix. And then Phoenix approached me with a project which wasn't a horror film. It was more of a really clever thriller, actually. So I wanted to do that. So I decided I'm going to work with them on this project. And we spent a whole year with different writers. Actually, it was hilarious all the way through Urban Legend. My assistant Edgar and I, we both Death Wish 3. We'd always quote Death Wish 3 to each other, like they killed the Giggler Man and all that. We just did that all the time. Anyway, so I'm working on this film Blood Relative with this writer. And it occurs to me after a while, it's like, God, he looks awfully familiar to me. Turns out he was the actor in Death Wish 3 who said that line.
Oh my God.
He was the guy. Like, you couldn't believe it. I was like, one of my favorite films, guilty pleasure movies. Yeah, I'm working with the guy who said that line, Tony Spiridakis. It was hilarious. Anyway, he's a great writer, and we did so many drafts of the script together, and it just got to the point where Phoenix just weren't quite happy with. We brought in another writer, a brilliant guy called David Scarpa. He and I started working on it, and it got to the point where I was just burned out on developing the script. We turned it in so many different ways, and it was like, does it even resemble now the movie that we started with? And it's no one's fault. That's the way the process kind of works. People have an idea, and maybe we should try it this way. And trying those things out takes a while. Someone's got to write a draft. You've got to give feedback on the draft. It all just eats into your time. And eventually, I got fed up with that development process, and I jumped onto Valentine because I just wanted to get back and make another movie. And I thought Valentine was really sort of a clever concept. I love the idea that it was all about really smart women. It wasn't your typical kind of slasher setup. It was a bit more intelligent than that. Had a different killer when I came on board, and I kind of reworked it the way that it ended up in the movie. It made more sense that way. It wasn't such a fake out. We kept the fake out, but we kind of diverted back to what it really should have been at the very, very end of the movie. So that was really fun. And I had just as much fun making Valentine as I did on Urban Legend. I had the most beautiful crew. Rick Boda was my cinematographer. One of the most wonderful people I've ever worked with. Rick is just wonderful. And Steve Merkovich was the editor, and the whole cast and crew were great on that film. Denise and Marley and Jessica, the two Jessicas. David Boreanaz was wonderful to work with. Just amazing.
I had a question right on the tip of my tongue. Valentine, as I recall, reading somewhere, it had the quickest turnaround time of any major studio film that year, from like pre-production to release was like months.
Yeah. And same with Urban Legend. Urban Legend, I got hired in February. We were shooting in April. The film came out in September. So that's insane. I mean, we had an Urban Legend 13 weeks between turning off the cameras and the film coming out. So that's accelerated post, that's you don't get your Directors Guild of America, prerequisite number of screenings or anything like that. That was just like, get the film locked, get it tested once and go. Same with Valentine. It was very fast. That's why I couldn't score it. It was just too quick. We just didn't have the time for me to do that.
Yeah. Now, who was the original killer? Who in the original?
Well, it was Dorothy. It was Jessica
Dorothy.
Capshaw's character. And I thought it was mean to do that to her. I liked Dorothy too much as a character. I cared about her. She's she's the most complex of the girls in that story. And I just thought that would be the wrong way to go, to make her the killer. It just seemed wrong. I mean, we play that beat because it's tragic. For a few moments there, we make the audience think that that's the story that we've just told, which is horrible. No, but she just turns out to be another one of Jeremy Melton's victims. It's like, I definitely don't take the side of the killer in that movie, but the killer kind of, ends triumphant at the end of Valentine. He gets away with everything.
Yeah.
He gets the sweet revenge. It's the ultimate revenge of the nerd movie. But, when you watch that film, we definitely do not take his side. It's a horror film. It's like an unfair kind of ending. Warner Brothers insisted on there being a scream as we cut to black. So you hear this kind of scream, but I kind of processed it enough so it almost kind of sounds like it might be part of the song rather than actually something literal from the movie. I just didn't want Marley to scream at the end of the movie like he was going to kill her or something. That's keep it ambiguous. That was yeah. It was one of several notes I got.
That's one of the things I love about Urban Legend is that's one of the things I love about Valentine is that ending. That the blood dripping down onto her face, and you realize, oh crap.
With apologies to Jack Shoulder.
But yeah, that's yeah. Everybody anybody who's familiar with my channel, they know that I'm a big supporter and collector of physical media, as are you, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
People have been prophesizing the death of physical media for years now, but thanks to Arrow and Scream Factory and Severin and Synapse and all these great companies, it just kind of keeps on keeping on. What do you think the future holds for physical media, or is there going to be a future for physical media?
Oh, Justin, I certainly hope so. I don't want to live in a world where the only way we can watch films is on streaming services. When they have the particular rights to a movie or something. What's going to happen to all the great little gems that we love, that we, unless you collect them, there's no more, video stores. Well, actually, I hear in LA that Vidiots are reopening, which is it was my video store in Santa Monica that I used to go to. They're reopening with a big theater and stuff, so that's exciting. But for most people, these films are going to be out of reach. They're only going to get to see what's on a streaming service. I was saying to my wife the other day, like, the guy in the street wants to watch Amadeus, right? Say, for example, just pick a movie that won an Oscar or something, won several Oscars. How's he going to see that movie now? He doesn't have a copy on VHS. He doesn't have a DVD of that movie. How's he going to watch that film? It's not on any of the streaming services in Australia. That film's essentially lost to him. That's not a minor movie. That's a major studio film that won Oscars. Unavailable to watch unless you own a copy of it. So I just think, it's so important that those of us who love movies, we actually collect them, and we keep a copy, because that may be the only way you're going to see that film.
Yeah.
So all the stuff I try and buy is like you said, all those labels. I try and collect all that stuff, A, because I want the movies, but B, because I want that label to continue to put out those movies as long as possible. If I don't support them on a release that I maybe don't want, they're not going to have the money to put out the thing that I'm going to want 3 months' time or something. So I kind of try and support all those labels. And I'm always saying that on social media that we should support physical media and stuff. And I just think probably preaching to the choir to some degree, because the people that listen to me on Twitter and the people watching now, I'm sure, are all movie fans who probably have collected all that stuff as well. But I just think it's important, because I don't want to imagine a future without physical media, but I got a feeling we're going to be living in that future eventually. Don't know when, but what I was encouraged about was that the PlayStation 5 and the new Xbox both have 4K Blu-ray players in them. So that increased the number of those machines out there, but subsequently increases the customer base for that format. So I hope it continues. I have a budget every month that I can blow on books and discs. And I make sure I do. I just do. I just make sure I spend that money on it and support all those labels. It's really important.
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting to a point where there's still a lot of movies that never made the jump from VHS to any other format. And if we don't have any physical media anymore, those movies are just going to disappear. They're just going to go away.
That's right.
Yeah. So I mean, we're at this point of, movies are going to vanish. Movies are going to disappear. And the streaming format today is, I was on Amazon Prime yesterday on my Fire Stick, just scrolling through this deluged with these like straight to streaming movies. And it's like, nobody's ever going to watch any of these. There's way too many. You're never going to, it's like new filmmakers today, if they want to go that route, that's great, because the movie's accessible in everybody's home pretty much. But they're literally the needle in the haystack. How are you going to be getting noticed?
Yeah. To click on that tile, it's also, you can get burned with some of these direct to video movies pretty quickly, and it might just put you off the whole genre in general. We sort of have to look out for the little good ones amongst that pile, because there's a lot of stuff that's just filler, and there's a lot of content. And I know exactly what you mean. It's like you go through that Amazon list, and it's like, man, I have no idea. I've never heard of this thing before. But let's give it 10 minutes and see if we want to keep going. And it's like, you don't always want to continue with those films. But it's important that filmmakers have an outlet too. Maybe the only outlet available to some of them. So, that's a problem. There's more and more of these streaming services kind of consolidate their power. It's fewer and fewer avenues to get your films distributed. They're eventually going to control all the outlets. Once physical media is dead, it's going to be a different ball game, and I have totally different bargaining power. And I think it's scary. I don't want to live in that future.
Yeah. Yeah. And also too, I mean, when you just have a movie that's available on streaming, well, what happens when the streaming service no longer has the rights to stream that movie? It disappears.
That's right. That movie's on. Yeah. That's no longer in your collection.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they, or they edit it because there's something risque in it, and, they just cut it out.
Yep.
They're not.
Yep. They get final cut.
Yeah. If you've got that movie in your collection, you don't have to worry about that. So, I don't know. I really dread the day when that happens, where there is no more everything's digital. It's just, there's no ownership. There's nothing physical. You're basically renting.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And if that's what the future looks like, it's a really bleak, scary future. I've collected physical media, God, since I used to copy a VHS tape to another VHS tape so I could have a copy of my favorite movies. I've always wanted them on the shelf. I always want to be able to reach for something. I might be in the mood for Hills Have Eyes Part 2 one day. I want to be able to just grab it off the shelf and watch it. So, and it's a great time at the moment because all these films are getting special releases, and it's wonderful. I love extras on a disc. I devour that stuff. So you never get enough. I want to hear everything I can learn about Tremors. There it is.
Yeah. Right. I'm a junkie for the making of documentaries and the commentaries and the interviews. I want to know every little detail about
for sure
everything.
Well, that's when I heard Scream Factory were doing special editions of Urban Legend. I just said, okay, I'm going to pull out all the stops. I'm going to pack this thing with as many extras as I can, and I had no idea it would result in a 2.5-hour documentary and a whole second disc full of stuff. That was wild. And then during that process, they acquired the rights to Valentine, so it was great. On that trip to America, Peter Bracke and I interviewed, I don't know, 4 or 5 people a day some days. Just trying to get through the cast list. I was only there for 2.5 weeks, so we'd arrive, I'd say hi to the person I hadn't seen, then Peter would go off and interview them, and then we'd be off to the next interview. So it was really busy. That was a really busy shoot.
Yeah, and that's both of those are such great releases, and I was so happy that Urban Legend got that big 2.5-hour documentary, like you said, and Valentine's nothing to shake a stick at. There's lots of great content
Yeah, we
on that
tried to pack as
Valentine.
much as we could in. I remember we did 4 interviews, and then we were straight over to Don Coscarelli's house to sit down in his lounge room and record the commentary for Valentine. And we were very, very busy. We didn't no wasted time on that on that trip.
Yeah, and like what I mean, where else are you going to get a Don Coscarelli commentary on Valentine? That when I first heard that, I was like, that's got to be a typo. Don Coscarelli talking about Valentine?
A
Like I
lot
was
of
like,
people were confused by that. He came out to the set. He was there when I was shooting the whole Denise Richards kill in the hot tub. So he timed it
oh,
really well. He got a really fun scene to watch because that was really wild. And had
that's
a
what
lot
I
of
would
fun
have
with
liked to
the
have been
camera.
there too.
Oh, not for, I wasn't being lecherous. It was just a fun scene in terms of technically. It was really fun for Don. But I just remember on the lunch breaks, the crew would be all gone, and I was there on the set with Don, and I just walked through the scene with him. And this is going to be the next, and it was just so cool to be next to one of my heroes. You know, as I'm planning out a sequence for the movie. And Don was there, and he was there by the monitor. And every time we do a take, what do you think, Don? Was that any good? And it was wild. I was very happy that day. It was really nice to have him there.
Yeah. Oh, that's very, very cool. Very cool. Um, when I had Patrick Lussier on for a Bloodstream, um, I asked him about the highs and lows of the business. He went from having the #1 film in theaters with My Bloody Valentine 3D to doing Drive Angry, which underperformed. And I remember him saying that the perception of My Bloody Valentine's success didn't have anything to do with him directing it or Todd's screenplay or the acting and anything creative. It's a horror movie. It's a niche thing. It's a fluke. Right place, right time. However, when Drive Angry came out and it didn't perform well, his phone stopped ringing, so to speak. The blame was laid at his feet. Is
Yes,
that
as they say, success has 1,000 fathers, and failure is an orphan. Unfortunately, in
right?
this business, so um, he's right. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know that I would ever think someone would say that My Bloody Valentine was a fluke. I mean, he's the guy who's edited Scream and a whole lot of other great
Right.
films.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
guy knows his craft.
Mm-hmm.
Todd's a fantastic writer. I know that very, very well. And I don't see how you can't credit those guys for the success of that thing. But I can see what Patrick's saying. There's a lot of assumptions get made in Hollywood that aren't necessarily accurate. So, but it's interesting, when a film flops, it's like they're very quick to blame the director. But if it's a success, there's a whole lot of people want to take credit for that.
Exactly. Did you? Because
There's
I
not
mean,
wrong about that.
I love Valentine. I know most of the people watching this, probably all the people watching this, love Valentine too, and it's a movie that's definitely grown in popularity over the years. It underperformed at the box office. Did you feel as though the blame for that, you shouldered the blame for that?
I think maybe partly yes, and also I think people kind of realized it came out at the wrong time. We came out after the Wayans brothers had already done a spoof of the genre with Scary Movie 1, right? It's a bad time to come out with it. And I kind of saw that writing on the wall when I knew that film was coming out. I also had to open up against Hannibal, so it's like we were kind of going after a lot of the same audience. So I had the misfortune of opening on the same day as the 20th anniversary of Silence of the Lambs. You can't pick all that stuff. But it still came in like #2. It made money. I mean, I remember Dylan, the producer, telling me that, Alan said, it was one of the only films we released this year that didn't make any money. It underperformed. But I think since on video and stuff, it's done respectable numbers. It wasn't an expensive movie to make. They did do a pretty extensive advertising campaign in terms of outdoor advertising, so that all cost money. I think probably part of the blame was laid at my feet. I think it happens with every filmmaker. It's you've got to make money. Hollywood's all about money. That's what drives the machine. And that's the only kind of that inspires the creation of any movie, makes some money out of it.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about how you like to, sort of pay it forward, where, Richard Franklin helped you as a young filmmaker and you want to help young filmmakers. Well, we've got a young filmmaker,
Absolutely.
a young Australian filmmaker who's in the green room right now. And
Fantastic.
why don't we bring him on, and we'll try and talk him out of being in this business, because this business is cutthroat, it's brutal. Go to college.
We'll give him a reality check.
Give him a reality check. Go to college, get a business degree, stay away from this craziness. Net points aren't real. Net points
That's
aren't
right.
Real. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Michael, how you doing, man?
Very, very good, thank you. Nice to meet you
Michael.
both. And yeah, Jamie, how are you? Nice to meet you, Justin, as well.
Nice to see you, brother.
Yes,
I watched your movie. Congratulations. You're a demented motherfucker, and it's really fun.
Oh, thank you. I feel like I'm at home. Yeah, I'm with my people right here. Yeah.
You are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really is so kind of you, Jamie. I just want to say thank you for bringing me on, and everything that you were saying before. It's just not everybody does that kind of thing in this industry, and I've been trying to sort of get my career off the ground for quite a few years now. And what you did, it meant a lot, and yeah, I just think it's fantastic, and I really appreciate it.
It's very kind of you to say so, Michael. But I think it's really important that we all help each other out, because, like I said, other people help me, and it's just, if we can help give each other a bit of exposure, and you got into Fantastic Fest. That's really wild. That's a huge achievement. That's
thank you.
Celebrated. And as soon as I saw that, I wanted to shout it out there. I'm really proud of you. I think that's amazing. I know how hard it is to do that. So
absolutely, and that's like, I've kind of tried to be. It's been almost like 20 years since I've been trying to do this, so it's kind of like, it's definitely not an overnight success, if you know what I mean. It's like, as they say, there's no such thing as overnight success, and it's a complex industry to really try and make your mark in, and I think you just have to love it, and you have to have perseverance, and you've got to do it for the pure love of it, because outside of that, there's just so much in there that can deter you, and you just have to enjoy it, really, and like people like yourself who just have such a genuine love of the genre, and you're still obviously to this day fueled by it just as much as you were when you were a kid. And I remember growing up in Melbourne and doing the same thing with trying to join up to as many video stores as I could, and even going on like pilgrimages to video stores from Frankston to Thornbury, the other side of the city, to try and get a copy of Eraserhead on VHS, which was impossible to find because it was never released. And it was like this one store had an import copy of it. So that was the only way that I could see it. And I was like 14, 15 at the time. This was 90s, the early mid-90s, somewhere thereabouts. And it was like, it's just such a lost era that people really don't, they just don't appreciate it now with the internet and everything being so accessible. You had to really hunt movies if you wanted to see them back in the day.
Mm-hmm. I had to catch a train and then walk about 15 minutes to a video store to find a copy of John Carpenter's Elvis with Kurt Russell. It's the only place I had a copy of that movie. So that's
I was the same.
To
his films, like I had this thing where I'd want to go through the filmography of everyone, and that's the same as you would have as well. And his some of his TV films and things like that, like even was it Zuma Beach or something like that, I wanted to see. I think it was called.
He did a film called
which he wrote.
Yeah, he did one that was kind of like Rear Window called Someone's Watching Me, and it was so funny. I'd seen that movie once, and then I went to live in the States for a while, and we rented this apartment in Santa Monica, and we were there for a year. And it was only like when the Screen Factory edition came out, I realized I was living in the building that he shot that movie.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah.
Well, Michael, why don't you tell us about some of your work? I know you've got some
sure.
Yeah, tell us about some of your work, man.
Well, basically, I made 2 short films during lockdown last year, back to back, and which was kind of crazy. And it wasn't intentional to make it during lockdown. Lockdown happened after, you know, we were deep into kind of pre-production, and then the idea was to sort of do 2 horror films that were completely different. So I wanted to sort of showcase different sensibilities of myself as a genre filmmaker, and go as kind of out there as possible, pretty much. And yeah, so we went into kind of pre-production, and then the COVID happened, and then I put sort of a lot of money and my savings and everything like that into making these films. And I wanted to do something that was just like pure and authentic and didn't pander to anyone, was just purely something that I wanted to see, and something very peculiar. And I wanted to just pay tribute to these sort of visions that I had in my mind. And so I was really hyped about it, excited, got great cast and crew together. We were just all on the same page, and we're making them back to back within 6 days over the span of 2 weeks. And then COVID happens, and then we have to cancel everything and then reschedule, and then people start dropping out, and it becomes a complete and utter nightmare. But I still had the energy that was pushing me forward because I was so deep into it. There was no way I could stop. And I just kind of kept going and going and going, and just there was this constant feeling of things being shut down at any moment, which was probably the hardest part of it. And so, yeah, eventually we got there and we got on set, and, you know, one of the films, Sweet Mary, which is the one that's been in Fantastic Fest and Beyond Fest, and it's kind of going a bit nuts right now with the festivals. It sort of started out quite slow, and it's going crazy. But this film was like out in the middle of nowhere in the Mornington Peninsula, and even on Seaford Beach, which you probably know Seaford, Jamie, I'm thinking.
Very well.
Yeah, so we're killing people out there on the beach, like brutal. I mean, Jamie will know, he's seen the film, so it's a pretty extreme really brutal. We kind of wanted to go next level extreme, like to the point where it makes you sort of, thank you. That means a lot. That means a lot. But to the point where it kind of makes you question, like, the violence that you're watching in a way. And like, as horror fans, like, we grow up watching so many people getting killed, you know, on the screen, and it's like, and even people generally, like even playing video games, like people have killed thousands of people on video games. And it's just like this collateral damage. It's like endless. And the film in a way is about that, kind of like that, where that could lead us in the future. And like, what if what if we get to a stage in our future where we can't die? So we're immortal, and the only way that we can understand death and pain and is to go back in time and sort of go on a killing spree, which is sort of where my which is where my film begins. And yeah, so but yeah, it was an intense shoot, and it was hard. Making movies is hard enough as it is, but when you put COVID in the mix, it takes it to another level. And then when you've got 2 movies at once, because we had this other film, I Call Upon Thee, as well, which is kind of more of a supernatural horror film, kind of harking back to kind of the Nightmare on Elm Street kind of vibes and that kind of thing. And
I haven't seen that one yet, but I'll watch that one next.
Yeah, well, we've got Steve Moore, who did the soundtrack to that. He's done like The Guest and in a band called Zombie. Awesome. I think talking about the John Carpenter side of things, he's definitely right in that kind of space. But yeah, it was that was really challenging because we were shooting in a house, and there were limitations for how many people you could have in a house. It was 10, and we had a crew of 20. So it's like we had to shuttle people in and out. Like the girls, we had orders that the girls in the film had to stay, you know, within a certain distance from each other. It was incredibly complex, and it was like, this was when things were kind of going haywire, and it was like I was ringing the government and trying to get feedback on what to do. They didn't have the answers, you know, so it's like nobody knew what that would.
You're in fresh territory there, trying to make a film under those conditions, man. I mean, you're taking me back to my short film days, and I just remember how hard it was just to keep everyone to keep that commitment to the film. You know, people would drop out. It's like no one's getting paid, so it's so much harder to kind of keep that whole thing together.
And when you
so I understand intimately.
Yeah, and I got to say as well, I remember talking about Silent Number. Like I remember back at VCA, which is the same film school that Jamie went to. I remember in the class. It's a film school. There's not a lot of genre filmmakers in there. Would that be fair to say, Jamie? So when I was there, we were watching the short films of the prior graduates, and they were great, but they didn't speak to the genre side of me. And when I saw Jamie's, I was like, wow, like Jamie is just going for it with the complete Hollywood aesthetic, camera work, atmosphere, music. Everything. It was like exciting, and to think that this guy, you know, came from my hometown was just so inspiring. And
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, where can we find your films?
Yeah, so basically they'll be sort of touring the festival circuit, and you will be able to see, I believe, some of them online over the next couple of months through festivals and that kind of thing. There's some I can't announce just yet, but there will be the opportunity for people in the US to be able to see them streaming. And there are festivals like there's like Fantastic Fest, Beyond Fest, Holly Shorts. Sweet Mary will be playing at the Chinese Theatre later this month, which is like a total dream. And they're just playing. Both films are playing in Paris at the moment at L'Étrange Festival, and we'll be playing like there'll be Brooklyn, Mexico, Tennessee, New Orleans, Atlanta, Rhode Island. Pretty much a lot of the US they'll be kind of playing. And
you've done so well to film out there. It's really hard work.
Thank you.
It's hard to make it, but then it's even harder. You've got to get it out there and get it seen. So you've done a brilliant job with that.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that you were saying before, is like the whole idea with making these films is to showcase myself as a feature filmmaker and to try and make these into feature films. And like I've just finished the feature script to I Call Upon Thee, and we're sort of taking meetings over in the US, or Zoom meetings, I guess you would say, about that to try and sort of get some interest in that. And Sweet Mary, when I get a chance, I'll be doing a feature, or finishing off the feature for that as well. So it's like exactly what Jamie did, where it's like you bet on yourself and then you go for it, and you show people out there that you can do it, because, you know, people like Jamie did it, people like Richard Franklin did it. It's like that kind of line that you follow. You got
to believe in yourself before anyone else will. So, you know, you're doing the right thing, Michael. It's not an easy road to hoe, but you know, you're doing all right stuff, man. You're on the right track. I'll be the first one to cheer you on when you make your first movie. That'll be amazing.
Fingers crossed. And yeah, I'm planning. There's a feature I have sort of in development we had some funding, development funding through Film Victoria, and I'm hoping to sort of make that as a debut feature film here in Melbourne, which is sort of set in. Do you remember the Sharpies back in the day, the gang, the violent gang? And so it's a film set in that world, and but it's very John Carpenter influenced, believe it or not.
Right. Well, we need more of those.
yeah, who was also one of my big heroes growing up, you know, for sure.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, man, I'm so excited for you, Michael, and this festival circuit's great news. And man, keep me posted on all the news, because I'd love to see you make your first film as soon as possible.
Oh, absolutely, and I can't wait to see your next film as well. So
hopefully you won't have to wait very long.
Excellent. I can't wait. Will you be scoring it?
Oh yeah, I'm scoring it. Actually, the funny thing about this new movie, which I can't say anything about, is that Justin knew about it before I did.
Oh wow, amazing!
I'm acting as Jamie's agent now, but instead of the usual 15% fee, I only charge 65.
Yeah.
He's cutting me a make rate deal.
Mm-hmm. I give Jamie all the net points he wants.
Awesome. Can you tell us anything about it, Justin?
No, I cannot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's gonna be great fun though. It's gonna be killer, and I'm working with some really wonderful people.
Oh, brilliant. Awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and it's nice to meet you. And
Yeah.
I hope you all the best, man.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. Great to be on here, and thanks once again.
You're welcome,
care,
brother.
Man.
Great to meet you, Michael.
Excellent. Nice to meet you both.
Okay. Here's my friend.
You have a great day. Thank you. Thanks,
See you, buddy.
Bye.
That was cool.
Oh, that's lovely. I love hearing stories like that. Young filmmakers getting a chance to get out there and have some exposure. That makes me very happy.
What would be like? I know you went to film school. There's kind of, some people say go to film school. Some people say just take the money and make a movie and let that be your film school. Would you recommend film school to somebody who's interested? Or
absolutely. I mean, I made wonderful friends at film school, and I don't know that I would have been able to make my, I Know What You Did Last Summer trailer without help from my film school buddies, and I don't think I could have. So I'm really grateful to have had that experience, and you learn a lot by not so much in a classroom. You learn a lot by getting on set and actually making short films and working on everyone else's short films. And people make a lot of mistakes at film school, and you learn from those mistakes. Way more than you do from the films that turn out great. You learn much more from seeing how things don't always go well, and you try and avoid those same pitfalls. So I think film school is wonderful. There's no other real experience like it, and I certainly wouldn't be able to get my hands on 16mm gear back in the early 90s without film school. I was very grateful to actually edit on film. Quickly after leaving film school, we all went on to Avid, and it was all digital editing, but at film school, we were cutting film. It was the old-fashioned way, the way George Romero would, edit, the way Halloween was edited. It was actually cutting film. So I'm glad to have had that experience. One of the last people, group of people, probably worldwide who did that, because Avids and Lightworks and all that stuff came in afterwards, and editing changed for the better. I might add, that was way easier cutting digitally than it was cutting on film.
Yeah. How, aside from, digital's the way that things are filmed these days, how else has the landscape of filmmaking changed since you got into the business to now? And has it changed for the better? Has it become easier to get into business, or difficult to get into business?
I think it might be more difficult now to get into the business because you're competing against a lot more people. I mean, I guess it was always kind of competitive. I don't know. It's distribution has changed a lot, and it's like we were talking about earlier. The streaming services, it's Netflix are now financing a lot of the movies that I did around the $15 million range. That Hollywood don't make many of those movies anymore. They're they're making big superhero movies, or they're making these micro budget Blumhouse things. I guess you get a film like *Malignant*, which is in the $40 million range, but most of those kind of $15 million movies are getting made over at Netflix or Amazon now. Mm-hmm. They're kind of taking that, filling that gap. Hollywood just don't, I guess because it costs the same amount of money to market, a Batman movie that it does to market a little $15 million thriller or something. They're just not making as many of those as they used to. I mean, we watched Basic Instinct the other day, and just remembering all the great thrillers of the 90s. You just don't see them anymore. They don't. It was a great era for action films and thrillers and stuff, the 90s, and they're just not making them many movies like that for that audience anymore. It's like, if you don't like superhero movies, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, I mean that's been a big trend where, if you're not making a superhero movie, you're not making a movie. I remember hearing filmmakers like David Lynch and John Waters and
Scorsese.
Who else? Well, but like Lynch and Waters were saying, the mid-range movies, Hollywood doesn't want to make. That's where we live, and Hollywood doesn't want to make those anymore. They want to make the big Uber budget, movie. They want to make
True.
they want to invest the most money into something that's going to get them the biggest return. And your little 20-30 million dollar, that they'll then turn around and sink 60 into promoting, they don't want to do that anymore. It's not worth their time. They'll dump that money into the next Marvel movie.
It's true. Like, correct. Money drives everything in Hollywood. It always has, and they've just seen those huge returns come in, and that's what they want. Like Jaws changed the landscape in Hollywood. That was the first film that proved you could make a blockbuster that was capable of making enormous amounts of money. And they've been chasing that, initial high ever since, like a drug addict.
Yeah. I have shared the link if anybody wants to jump on the stream and actually ask Jamie a question face-to-face digitally. We can do that. So that link is on the screen if you want to join. Also, if you want to ask Jamie just a question, just type it out in the chat or send it as a super chat, and I will try my best to keep track of it. So
happy birthday, Julie. I just saw in the live chat it's Julie's birthday.
I was getting ready to ask you for a Jilly birthday shout out. So there you go, Jilly. Hope you're having a good birthday today. We should have sent Jilly, some nice Valentine chocolates with.
Yeah, we should have done something.
Should have done that. Yeah, just don't eat them.
Yeah.
Just they may have something inside of them, but yeah. So I want to go back to physical media for just a second here. What are some of your favorite physical media releases that you own?
Dawn of the Dead from Second Sight.
Oh yeah, that's 4K. Yeah.
I love that. The Phantasm box from Arrow is fabulous.
Oh yes.
I loved the Peter Brachy Friday the 13th box that came out was really fun. They've always been favorites of mine, guilty pleasure movies of mine. I love that. God, there's so many, Justin. I'm just looking up on my shelves. There's so many that I'm happy with. I bought a Eureka Cujo. That was really fun. They had an interview with Charles Bernstein, one of my favorite scores. Love that. God, there's so many, man. The Dawn of the Dead one was the one that really jumped out for me. I was very happy with 88 Films Urban Legend trilogy as well. They did a beautiful job with that. Yes. That's really lovely. That's an even better encode than the Scream Factory version, which is there's no slouch, but the 88 one's just a little bit better. Yeah, so I just love physical media. I collect as much of it as I can. I just got the bird with the crystal plumage from Arrow in 4K, which I'm going to watch. And we're watching the Hitchcocks. We watched Vertigo the other night. We watched Rear Window and the Birds. I watched Psycho. We're going to do Psycho 2 and 3 as well soon. Rewatch those, especially after talking about it today. I really want to revisit it again.
We have a question here related to physical media. Let me scroll back up here from Pablo. Thank you for the $5 super chat, Pablo. He wants to know, what did you buy this month, Jamie?
I bought books this month, actually, rather than discs. I bought a whole lot of books from Valancourt. They publish great horror fiction. Some of it's has been out of print for years and years, like decades, and some of it's kind of more contemporary. The last couple of months I've blown a whole lot of stuff on books. So I've got this great pile of books that I'm making my way through. I'm trying to think. I've got some stuff on order. Like I've got Alone in the Dark coming, and what else is on order? I've got all the Halloweens, the 4Ks of those. I don't know how many editions of those. The Thing's coming. I've got The Thing in 4K coming from the UK and also from the US, because I'm a sucker for those movies. I can't feel obligated to collect every edition.
No, I feel you. I've got I can't tell you how many different editions of Halloween I've got, and now I'm like, I'm gonna buy these. I've put it off, but I'm gonna buy these Halloween 4Ks. There's no doubt about it. I'm gonna buy them. So
I got them all at 5, Justin. I've got the box set, and I kind of think the Blu-ray of 5 is going to be fine for me for the 0 times that I'm probably going to watch that one. But the first 4, I'll have on 4K.
Well, a lot of people are excited about that Part 5 release because it's got the Dr. Death opening that it has never been seen before. And
oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I'll have to wait till someone tells me about it. I guess it's never been a fan of 5 for some reason. I just never quite got into it. I think Danielle Harris is great in 5, but oh god, I heard some. I can't repeat the stories, but yeah, I heard some. I heard some funny stories about that one.
I'll have to ask you about those off the air.
Yeah,
but thank you, Pablo. Appreciate that, my friend. He also says that he remembers seeing Valentine in high school, and he could tell it was neutered.
Yeah, well, it was. It was. I don't know how you could tell that, but yeah, I felt like I was pulling my punches when I really wanted to give everyone a good wallop for those death scenes. But anyway, what can you do?
Yeah. Well, you were talking about books, and I know you're a collector of film novelizations, and this is one of my newer addictions. I'm catching up with you. Jaws 4.
Yeah.
You've got to
Jaws 4's fun.
Got to read the Jaws 4 novelization. Just picked this one up. I didn't even know it was a novelization until I saw your post.
Yep.
Friday the 13th, part 3.
Yeah, that's nice. That's the one I've got. That's the edition that was available in Australia.
Let's see. Friday the 13th, part 6.
Ooh, I haven't got that one. I'm jealous.
Got Halloween 2 and 3.
Yeah, got those. Yep. No,
and
Halloween 3 Halloween 3 is a really good. I read the book before I saw the movie, and the whole scene where the family gets killed, like with the when the kids with watching it's really brutal in the book. Like when I saw the film, I was like, oh, it's still pretty bad, but the way it's described in the book, man, it got me as a kid. That freaked me out. Like I was dreading that scene coming up in the movie after having read it in the book. So I don't know if it's still as potent as it was. Jack Martin is a pseudonym for Dennis Etchison, who wrote novelization, and I know a whole lot of other great stuff. So yeah, Jack Martin is his pen name. The one that I got recently.
Dead and Buried.
Yeah.
Are you still there? I think he's lagged out. Or is my internet lagged out? Nope.
Hang on, am I back?
There you are. Yeah, there you are. There you are. We got you. We got you back.
Yeah, got me.
So you got Dead and Buried.
Just saying, on the beautiful 4K. Yeah, the 4K on Blue Underground's 4K on Dead and Buried. There's an interview with the author of the novelization, and it dawned on me. He's like, I haven't got that one, so I found it on eBay the other day.
And I think you've got the original. This is a reprint of part 4. I think you've got the original of part 4.
Yes. Yeah, I've got the. I've got this one.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Yeah.
And I've got Jaws 2 around here somewhere, but I couldn't find it. But I've got Jaws 2.
Jaws 2 is a really good novelization. Like it's actually based on the original screenplay for the movie, not the one that they shot. So it's a totally different experience, the novel of Jaws 2. So you'll enjoy it.
Yeah,
there's not as much shark but it's still really fun.
I love the part in Jaws: The Revenge where you're inside the shark's head, and the shark doesn't know why it's killing and eating all these people. It's like the shark is confused. Why am I killing and eating all these people? Oh, I'm under a voodoo curse.
Well, there's this one that came out. The Bruno Mattei, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't get the novelization that Severin put out, but a lovely gentleman on Twitter saw my post and he had a spare copy, so he's going to mail me his copy of the novelization of this one, which is apparently even more batshit crazy than the movie, which I don't even know how that's possible. But yeah.
I don't know how that's possible either.
It's supposed to be a lot of fun.
I don't know how that's possible either. Jeez. Let's see. We did get. I don't know if I can still bring this one up. This wasn't really a question. Let me see if I can still bring it up though. Nope, it's disappeared. It was a super chat from Michael Piatowski. He just says, "Hey Jamie, hope you are doing okay in Melbourne lockdown. It's starting to suck." So I think he's Australian. So I think he's a little fed up with the lockdown.
I feel your pain, brother. I feel your pain. It is starting to suck.
When did you first Everett DeRoche is a writer
Oh yeah.
that he's basically behind every classic Ozploitation film, writing those films. Patrick, Road Games, Razorback, and he wrote your last two films. How did you first come to know Mr. DeRoche?
One day, the script arrived from Gary Hamilton, and I didn't know anything about it. Storm Warning by Everett DeRoche. And as soon as I saw Everett's name, I'm like, well, I'm going to read this. And because I wanted to work with Everett for a long time, I was a big fan of his. He obviously worked with Richard Franklin. He's come up a lot in this conversation, Richard, tonight. But yeah, he's one of my favorite writers. He'd written so many classic Ozploitation movies, and I just wanted to work with him and meet Everett. So I read the script, thought, wow, how are we going to do this? Because originally in Storm Warning, the protagonists are naked for most of the film. The rednecks steal all their clothes, so they actually literally naked in the movie. We softened that a little bit because I thought there's no way I'm going to get this movie released if I try and do that, let alone find two actors willing to do that. So yeah, Everett and I met. I remember the first meeting. It was so much fun. We met and we hit it off sort of straight away. And then we just made an arrangement that we would meet every week. We'd meet for lunch. He lives about 45 minutes away from me, so we sort of met somewhere halfway, which was actually the restaurant that right next to the marina location in Storm Warning. We never planned on using that location, but as we got closer to production, it was like, well, it's right there in front of us. We might as well shoot it there. And Everett and I went for these big, long drives where he would take me to all the locations that he had in his mind when he wrote the script. So he took me to the mangrove maze, and that's where we shot the scenes and stuff. So Everett was really happy because I was sticking really closely to his vision of what Storm Warning should be. And, I was looking for these locations around Victoria, and Everett had already figured all that stuff out. So we started these wonderful trips, and we just became really good buddies. And I said to Everett, I'd really like to have you there on set every day for Storm Warning. And he was really chuffed to be invited to be, like, the writer's not always involved in that process. Mm-hmm. But I've always had my writers close by on my movies. I like to work really closely with my writers, and I like to stay close with them during production because I don't see their involvement ending as soon as the last draft's turned in. I think there's always ongoing work that the writer and director can do once you start scouting locations, and there's a million things that it's valuable to have the writer nearby. I just also like having someone who knows the script inside and out like I do. If something has to change on the day, I have someone I can talk to about the ramifications who isn't a producer, who doesn't have their own agenda about it, who's only focused on the creative part of the film like I am and wanting to do the best result possible. So I'm really lucky at the moment to be working with a very, very, very talented writer who's a big fan of the genre too. So I'm very lucky.
That always helps. Mm. Yeah. Well, speaking of writers, we actually had a question from Ray X. He wanted to know, how closely did you work with Silvio Horta? Did you collaborate on the script for Urban Legend with him?
Yeah, we did. As soon as I came over, Silvio would come to my hotel room every night, and we'd just work on the story, and we'd go through books on urban legends, and we made lots of little tweaks to the script along the way. And then once we got to location, same thing, Silvio came along and he scouted. We walked all the locations together, and this is where we're going to shoot the radio scene with Tara Reid, and we figured it all out. We rewrote the script to suit the locations that we were in. So that Silvio was very closely involved. He was down there for quite a lot of the shoot on Urban Legend. He's even in the movie in one scene. He's sitting in the class behind the guys in Robert Englund's class. He's sitting behind Rosenbaum and stuff. So you see Silvio in the movie, and yeah, I loved working with him. All my writers, I love working with all of them. I had close relationships with every single one of them. Very, very happy relationships that lasted years after the movie.
Wonderful. We've got somebody in the green room right now who I'm going to bring on. We have got my buddy Jess. What's up, Jess? How you doing, man?
Hey, Piz, man. Thanks for letting me on.
Not a problem. How are you doing?
Good. Just got done watching a movie on the projector in the backyard with my son. So,
what did you watch?
Luca, Disney Pixar.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Have you got a question for Jamie?
I don't have a question, but I gotta say, and I've told him this before in the chats on other streams, that I think Urban Legend is totally in the top of 90s horror movies. I really do.
Thanks, man.
And I
That's
just
really
had to
sweet
jump
of you to
on. My pleasure. I had to jump on and tell you in person and just say hi.
That's so lovely of you to say that, man. I really appreciate that. There's a lot of people worked really hard on that movie, and you know, I can't take all the credit for that picture. There's a lot of talented people who made that film happen. So, on behalf of all of them, thank you very much.
My pleasure, and thank you all. Thank you, Jamie. But
pleasure, brother. Yeah. So lovely to see you.
It's nice to finally get to be on screen with you.
Oh, it's awesome. I always love coming on Justin's channel and meeting people, and we just have lovely chat. And Justin's like a long lost brother to me. He's like someone who's obsessed with this stuff as I am. So he and I could talk for hours and hours, and we usually do. So it's lovely. It's lovely to meet you as well, Jess. It's cool.
Thank you. And yeah, Piz, you're awesome. You know that.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm going to jump off, guys. I just wanted to say hi. Thanks again.
So
thank
great
you,
to
Jess.
meet you, Jess.
Nice to meet you, Jamie. Thank you. Thanks,
Have
Piz.
a good night.
You guys too. Thank you.
Cheers.
What I think is funny is, like, Urban Legend kind of gets lumped into that. Oh, it's just a post Scream knockoff. You know what I mean? I've never seen that with Urban Legend. I know what you did last summer a little bit, but it's the same guy wrote it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Urban Legend to me has never felt, it's a little meta, but I mean, nobody's referencing other horror movies, and what I mean? Like we you know what I mean?
It's funny when we talk about it now in that context. You've got to understand, as we were going into making that film, we knew that it only existed because of Scream. So we knew on some level that we owed a debt to Scream, and there was a reason Scream was successful. And a lot of people in the studio and the producers are trying, and even Silvio were trying to analyze what made that film successful, and what do people want to see in the wake of it? And do they want something meta? Do they want to play it more straight? I went probably a little more straight on Urban Legend, but you're trying to figure out, where does this movie belong? And you don't want to, obviously you don't want to rip off Scream, but you obviously want to learn lessons from Scream and try and do the movie the right kind of way. So I never saw any similarities in terms of the story, other than similarities within the genre that they shared. I thought Urban Legend had a strong enough concept on its own with the Urban Legends that no one really thought of incorporating that in a slasher format. I thought that was really clever. So I thought we sort of stood on our own 2 feet, even though I knew we would be compared to Scream. It's interesting. A lot of the little meta moments in Urban Legend were just throwaway things that I asked the actors to do. Like Josh, when he's starting the car, I just said, just do one take when you're pretending you're going to react to your theme song, right? Yeah. And he just did it. And just for a joke, I put it into for the first audience preview. The audience loved that moment more than any other moment in the movie. The studio, after they saw that test screening, they had to go and buy the rights to that song, which we hadn't budgeted for. But there's no way we're not going to have that laugh, right? We want to have that laugh. Yeah. So little things like that just happened on the spur of the moment. It wasn't kind of planned in the script. So the meta moments in Urban Legend, probably more my fault than anything else. It wasn't actually anything that was in the screenplay. It was just kind of me thinking, well, we're in the post-Scream era now. We can probably have a little bit of fun with each actor's other persona. I thought so. Yeah, but that's really the only way we kind of share any DNA with Scream is just that we acknowledge that we wouldn't exist without it. I mean, Silvio and I had dinner with Wes Craven together before we shot the movie, where we kind of went to him and say, look, we're making this movie, but we want to do it respectfully, and he was gorgeous. He was like, just wished us all the best, and it couldn't have been more lovely. So that's a thing with people in the horror genre, man. Generally, they're really good people. There's only a few bad eggs. There's only a few Richard Stanleys and stuff out there who, the rest of them are pretty cool guys,
Well, have you been able to meet any other filmmakers or composers other than Richard Franklin and Wes Craven, who you were influenced by?
on my early travails around Hollywood, I mean, I met Rennie Harlan, I met all sorts of people. I met during Urban Legend, David Cronenberg was doing Existenz at the lab every day. We were having rushes at the same time because he was on the similar schedule that I was. So he would be at the lab every day. Sam Raimi was mixing A Simple Plan next to me when we were mixing the movie. Wow. I met George Romero in Melbourne, of all places. I've met Carpenter. I got invited to the premiere of Vampires, and I got to go to the after party and watch Carpenter play in the Coupe de Villes for like 2 hours. I've never seen his live show with movie music, but I have seen him play at the rap party for 2 hours, which was, I think I'd take the rap party over the concert. You know, it was a bit more intimate. And I got to meet John, and Deborah Hill was a really close friend of mine for years. She was a big mentor. I went and had meetings with her, and we just became really good friends. And she was really supportive of me, and she loved the Halloween was my favorite movie, and she really loved the trailer I made for I Know What You Did Last Summer. She got all the people from her office in, and she said, "You're all asking how you're going to break into Hollywood one day." She said, "This guy with $3,000 went and made this trailer, watched this stuff," and she was really she came and visited. Well, she didn't come to see me, but she came to Australia a couple of times, and she called me up each time, and we go and meet up when she was in Australia. So I was lucky. I got to meet a lot of my heroes. You know, I got to meet a lot of the people I really looked up to, and always was super respectful and grateful for their time. And you know, they're all lovely.
And I mean, you know, Halloween is right around the corner, and you know, Deborah Hill was such a you know, such a groundbreaking
she was a pioneer person. She was a ceiling smasher for women. Yeah, she was breaker of glass ceilings. I love Deborah. I mean, she's all my favorite films. In my early favorite films, she produced and co-wrote them, you know.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And you don't hear people you don't hear her brought up very often, unfortunately.
Not enough. I heard someone was two women were making a documentary about her years ago. They got in touch because they wanted to speak to me about that. But that seems, haven't heard anything more about that. But I hope they're still doing that because she deserves all that recognition. And I think, you know, she was involved with some of John Carpenter's best films.
Yeah. Got an interesting question here from Sasha. What would an Urban Legends Part 3 look like in your eyes today or in today's time?
Well, it's hard for me to answer that question because how do I put this? I can't answer that question at the moment. I'm sorry, because we do have some ideas about what that might look like. So that's all I can say.
It's good. It's a Bloody Mary remake. Urban Legend 3 Bloody Mary remake coming soon.
It's a sequel to the third one. Yeah,
just direct sequel to Bloody Mary. Oh goodness gracious. Did you film Storm Morning and Long Weekend back to back? Because they came out in like 07 and 08, right after the other.
No, they weren't done back to back. I did Storm Warning, then I went and did I edited Not Quite Hollywood for months and months and months, and then while I was wrapping up Not Quite Hollywood, I went off and shot Long Weekend, and then I came back and started editing Long Weekend, and then Mark needed me to come back and help him finish up Not Quite Hollywood because that post-production period went forever. So I was really busy with that period of time with those projects. They were, the films weren't done back to back, but Not Quite Hollywood was right in the middle of those two.
So I actually rewatched Storm Morning before our stream, and it was the second time I'd seen the film. And I think it's a great movie. I think it's really underrated. I think it's really it's down and dirty, brutal, gritty, grimy.
Yeah, it is. It's my feral 70s exploitation movie.
Yeah. And definitely it's on Amazon Prime. So if you guys have not seen Storm Morning, you should definitely look into it. It was one of those movies that, after seeing Urban Legend and Valentine, your name was kind of in my head. And somehow years later, I stumbled upon this. I don't remember if I looked you up on IMDb or if I stumbled upon Storm Morning and saw your name on it. But I was like, I got to watch this. And, But it wasn't easy to find, as I recall. This was pre-prime and all that jazz.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I could get a physical. I didn't know how to get a physical copy of it, but it was one of those that stuck in my head. Like I've got to watch this eventually. But yeah, it's on Amazon Prime. I highly recommend it. You did the score, which the score is phenomenal.
Thanks, man.
And yeah, very brutal stuff in that movie. I like it a lot.
Yeah,
so.
I had a blast doing Storm Warning. That score was one of the 2 times I've entered a score at Screamfest, and I won the trophy both times. There's that skull thing back there, you can see it, but I got 2 of those Screamfest trophies for my score to Storm Warning and Crawl Space. So both of those scores. So that could be the musical DNA.
Yeah. But I wasn't able to see Long Weekend, but what I discovered later was Long Weekend is also on Amazon Prime, but it's under a different title. So if you look up Long Weekend, you'll just find. Yeah, you'll just find like
Nature's
original.
Grave.
Nature's Grave.
Right. Yeah.
Like when I first saw that, I was like, is that because it has Jim Caviezel's face on it? And I was like, is that the same? And I clicked on it, and it was like directed by Jamie Blanks. I was like, well, why did they rename it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I contacted them and I said, "You're crazy. What are you doing?" And they said, "Oh, we think it's going to find a bigger audience because there was some comedy called Long Weekend." I don't know what their thinking was, but it's the worst title and the worst artwork. I don't know which demented monkey they got to do that on Photoshop. You know, it's crazy. It's got Jim Caviezel's got spiders coming out of his ears or something. I mean, it's the worst Photoshop job, the most horrible retitling. I begged them not to do it in an email. Didn't get anywhere with them. So, yeah, it's known as Nature's Grave in the US only, and the rest of the world it's still Long Weekend.
Well, I'm like fascinated with Jim Caviezel. Ever since I saw him in The Thin Red Line, he's been like an actor that I really have kind of kept an eye on. And when I did one of these with Rowdy Harrington had directed him in
oh yeah, in the golf movie.
The golf movie, yeah. Bobby Jones, Stroke of Genius, yeah. So
That's
I talked about Jim Caviezel with him, and I'd like to do the same with you. How was Jim Caviezel to work with?
One of the best relationships I've ever had with any actor was with Jim. Jim's very religious, as it's well known. I'm not, but that didn't prevent us from getting along. We had a great connection, the two of us, and he really was open to exploring that character. He saw it as a cautionary tale, which is why he wanted to do it, about what we're doing to the environment, about what human beings sometimes do to each other, kind of devour each other. That's what that movie's about. And he loved, like I did, the ambiguity of Long Weekend. We never come out and say Mother Nature's turning on these people. It could just be these people are just completely toxic and don't belong in that environment. They're such a misfit for that world that they just they have no business being there, and look, they're as toxic to each other as they are to Mother Nature. So that's why Jim wanted to jump on board, and I had the most wonderful experience working with him. I was so sad when we said goodbye at the end of that movie, and we email each other. He sends me funny text messages all the time, and he and Claudia ended up his co-star in Long Weekend ended up working on another film together. He requested her because they had such a good experience on that film. We had a lovely time, and it was the first time I've done a film with really only 2 actors. So I had a lot of time for Jim and a lot of time for Claudia to really go through things that I wouldn't have on another movie. And we were down the beach. It was beautiful. One of the most beautiful parts of the state that I live in, Victoria. We're on the southernmost tip of the Australian mainland. And this place called Wilson's Promontory with the most gorgeous beaches. And it's just, I got to shoot exactly where I wanted to make the movie. And it was just amazing. And we had perfect weather all the way up to the very last shot. Jim told me he was on the cross on the Passion of the Christ and almost got hit by lightning or something. And I'm like, seriously? I'm not making this up. And it's a total coincidence, but it was just crazy. On the very last shot of Long Weekend, He's got his shirt off. He's running, and he's going off. He's about to find the guy who's hanging from the tree. That was the last shot we did. I called cut on that shot. Within 30 seconds, the skies opened up, lightning's coming out of the sky, and it didn't stop raining for 3 days. So I just wrapped the movie, and then the heavens came down for 3 days. I couldn't have kept shooting if I'd wanted to. So I couldn't believe how lucky I got with the weather. I just thought, man, that's amazing. We just got in before the rains came. Like with 30 seconds with digital cameras, we're trying to put tarpaulins over them to stop them getting destroyed. It was and it was a hard film to make because those cameras were huge, with umbilical cords, cables running back to. It wasn't like film. There was a few moments we had to shoot film on long weekends when we were out on the surf, and when we were on the Steadicam. The digital camera was too heavy for that rig, so we went on to 35mm. And as soon as we're on film, we were zipping around getting shots really fast. As soon as we went back to digital and we were cabled up with all the stuff, it was just like dragging a big ball and chain with us the whole time. They were not good cameras to shoot on location with at that time. You know, they've since improved. That line of Arri cameras has now become the Alexa line. So this was like the D20 or something, which is kind of a forerunner to the Arri Alexa. Still beautiful optics, and the film looks gorgeous, but they were not easy characters they're not easy cameras to work with.
Yeah. Well, Todd and I were thinking the same thing. Rains were delayed because you cast Jesus.
That's right, man. That's right. You cast JC, it's all good.
or maybe Caviezel was like, you know, what would have been funny is like after it started raining, if Caviezel had just been like, I called in a favor. You know what I mean?
That could have started like lightning coming out of the sky. I was like, I don't know, man. Maybe he is Jesus.
I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about him, so maybe, I don't know, maybe he is. I don't know.
He's a beautiful man, and one of the best relationships I've had with, and I've had some really lovely relationships with lots of actors, but Jim was really, really special. I loved him.
That's cool. That's very cool. My buddy Turi offers up a very generous super chat. Thank you very much, sir. He says, 3 films I love: Urban Legend, Storm Morning, and Valentine. I had no idea they were all directed by Jamie. I used to watch Valentine on cable all the time. Thanks, Piz, and thanks, Jamie, for your wonderful insight and all you have done for the genre.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, man. That's really kind. I really appreciate those kind words. That's really sweet of you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Terry. I appreciate that. Very kind of you, sir. Let's see, what else have we got going here in the chat? Again, if anybody wants to jump on, the link is in the chat somewhere if you want to jump on. Shannon would like to know, what is your holy grail paperback book you're trying to find? What would be your holy grail novelization, or just any paperback book that you're looking for, Jamie?
Is there a paperback version of Friday the 13th Part 2 or Friday the 13th Part 1?
There is for Friday the 13th Part 1, and I think there's,
right.
I don't know about 2. I know there is for 1.
I'd like to get the other version of 3, the one that I don't have. I've got the same one you've got, but there's another one by the dude who wrote the other Friday books. I would just like to have those because there would be gaps. The one that was my holy grail for the longest time, I finally found it years ago, was the Fog novelization. That wasn't easy to find in Australia. Hard enough to find in the US, let alone trying to find a copy here. So that was amazing. And finally tracked down one of those.
Well, I keep an eye on eBay, and every now and again I'll look up like the Friday the 13th novelization and the Halloween novelization, and those are not cheap. Even like I almost bought the Patrick novelization on eBay, but decided against it. You know, it was like, with that money, I could buy a whole lot of other things. I just thought, no, I don't need it. Yeah. So those two in particular go for big money. Even like, you know, I saw one like for Halloween, and the cover was torn off of it, and they still wanted like $150 for it.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
it's crazy. They should just reprint it and someone would make a killing out of it. You know?
They would. Yeah, I mean, I know. Yeah, definitely. So, somebody in the chat asked, and I was going to ask you this myself. Where did that go? Basically, it had to do with what are some of your favorite, more recent horror films, like say of the past 5 or 10 years?
I loved It Follows. I thought
Mm.
that was brilliant. That's one of the ones that really stayed with me. I thought James Wan's done some really good stuff. I love The Invisible Man. I'm really super proud of what Lee Winnell's done. And Upgrade was terrific. You know, sort of a film, but really impressed with what those guys have been cranking out. I mean, it's top quality stuff. Malignant was really interesting too. It's like, you know, I haven't seen a movie like that in a very long time. It's kind of a throwback to some 90s stuff that was obviously he was riffing on. And the third act is just wild. It's just really great to see someone bold. I mean, you know, doing something with a big budget, with $40 million budget. You know, he's made plenty of money for lots of other people, so it's like time to give James Wan a bit of a chance to do what he wants to do. So I'm glad he used it and did something really interesting. So I think of other stuff that's really jumped out at me. I mean, The Descent's a while ago now, but I love The Descent. But yeah, It Follows is the one that really grabbed me. I know there's been other ones that I've really liked too. I'm just that not available to me at this very second.
Yeah, It Follows for me too. That's one that's definitely stuck with me through the years. There's no doubt about that. I love that freaking movie. Are you a fan of any of the A24 stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I love that label. I mean, I don't think they've put anything a bad film yet. You know, it's been terrific output. You know, the other label I'm really fond of is Spectrevision. I think they've done some really interesting work.
They have.
You know, I've never seen a bad movie with that Spectrevision logo in front of it. I've really enjoyed all their stuff. There's a great one that they've done that I don't know how many people saw it. It's called Daniel Isn't Real, and it's by the guy who, what's his name, Adam Egypt Mortimer, directed it. Very, very, very good film. Starring Arnold Schwarzenegger's son, Patrick, in it. It's it's a really good film. I like all that stuff. I liked Midsummer. I thought that was really like scary. I've got to watch the director's cut of Midsummer. I think he's a really good director. I know there's more I've seen. Have you seen The Dark and the Wicked? No, not yet.
That was my favorite movie of last year. Love.
Okay, I'll go and track it down right away. I'll buy a copy.
So good.
Oh, thank you for the tip.
Let's see. My buddy Nico has a question here. He says, Mr. Blanks, he's camera shy tonight. Unfortunately, Nico's a little camera shy. One of the things I love about Valentine now is how it subconsciously was my gateway drug to giallo. Can you share any favorite giallos you may have?
Well, my favorite giallo is Deep Red. You know, but I love the Fulci ones. I mean, I'm a fan of the whole genre. I mean, there's some really great examples of giallos, and but I think Deep Red's kind of the pinnacle for me of that form. They don't get much better than that. And Valentine, in many ways, is a giallo. It shares DNA with a giallo. That was definitely not by accident. So. And I'm so pleased people have picked up on that over the years, you know, that it hasn't been something that kind of escaped horror fans. They sort of got what I was trying to do there. It was trying to be an 80s slasher movie as part of that second wave of slashers. I wanted there to be at least one that was kind of like a classic 80s style slasher. Not all of them have to be meta, scream, type movies.
Yeah. For me too, Deep Red to me is sort of the quintessential giallo. That's got all of the elements of a giallo in it done to perfection.
Yeah. And Arrow's got that 4K version coming out. I don't know that I'm going to need it though, because my Blu-ray looks amazing from Arrow Deep Red.
Yeah.
It looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what the Blu-ray looks like, I can't only imagine the 4K must be just stunning. But I don't know if I can justify the upgrade.
But any other favorite Argento films? I love Tenebrae. I love opera.
Tenebrae. Just I love opera too. I mean, Phenomena is really fun, but I think, like most people, Suspiria is the one that I just always come back to. I just love it. I've seen it on the big screen so many times. I've seen it at home. Synapse have got the most beautiful version of it. The 4K version from Synapse is just stunning. I love those movies. There's always something to learn from Argento.
Oh, of course, yeah. And Bird with the Crystal Plumage, I think, is fantastic too. That's kind
I've
of
got to rewatch it. Yeah,
great little
yeah.
giallo.
I started it the other night and it looked amazing. I've just got to get through the whole thing.
Todd said we just had a thumping little earthquake in LA.
Oh wow!
Hopefully, it stays little.
Wow, seriously.
Yeah, geez.
Yeah, let's hope there's no aftershocks.
Yeah.
Be careful, Todd. Wow.
My buddy,
I've only been there for a minor earthquake, and it's something you don't forget. You know, it's really wild when the ground itself becomes unstable. It's scary.
Yeah. My buddy Jaxius says, "Can you let Jamie know his music is great? I'm getting lots of great inspiration from his work." And Jaxius is a very talented musician himself. So
I've seen his name on your channel, Justin. You've played a lot of his stuff, so that's high praise, Jaxius. Thanks, brother. I really appreciate those kind words. I'm glad you like the music. I'm a big fan of your stuff too.
FACD 183 says, "Does a movie like Urban Legend get storyboarded first?"
Sure does. Yeah, it's you storyboard for all sorts of reasons, but the most important reason is it's quick communication to the crew about what we're doing every day. If I don't storyboard, I've got to explain it over and over and over again to people what the shot is. If I can show them the shot straight away, what we're doing, everybody instantly knows what they need to do to get that shot ready. The makeup person knows. I mean, the camera guys know, the lighting. It all becomes so much simpler, and your shooting time gets maximized if you're not wasting time on set communicating to people. You've already communicated that. So I prep the hell out of everything. I never arrive on set and kind of make it up is what we're doing. I mean, I've already looked at the locations. I've already thought it through. I know where I'm going to put my camera. None of that stuff gets, made up on the spot. Occasionally, a bulb of inspiration will go off. An actor will do something and it will trigger something, but it's all done around the framework of careful planning. So I had pretty much the entire movie storyboarded. I think the only scenes I didn't storyboard were when the actors were sitting in the coffee lounge opposite each other, because I just simply didn't need to do that. I just, we were lighting in two directions and shooting from three angles, so that was not complicated enough to warrant storyboarding. But everything else was.
Yeah. We've got a big Valentine fan in the chat.
Hey.
Verisimilitude 86. He says he thinks the film is very underrated and he loves the look of the killer, or that he thinks the look of the killer is iconic. He also asked, could we ever get a Valentine sequel?
Oh, I'd love to do a Valentine sequel, but it's not up to me. Warner Brothers have full control over that property, and I think it's very unlikely the current regime at Warner Brothers will bring me back to do a sequel to Valentine, because I'm under good advice that Toby Emmerich, who runs Warner Brothers, absolutely hated Valentine when it came out. He was an executive at New Line Cinema, and I never got a meeting at New Line Cinema that went anywhere after Valentine, because he told my manager in no uncertain terms that he absolutely hated the movie, and I'm sure he didn't want to have a bar of me, and I'm sure he doesn't want to have a bar of me now. So I'm not going to have any luck at Warner Brothers making a Valentine sequel while Toby's there. So yeah.
Well, we know that you're an editor, you're a composer, of course, you're a director. Do you do any writing yourself? Are you working on any kind of scripts or anything? Just
I'm working on a project.
downtime?
Yeah, I'm working on an Australian project with a whole bunch of other Aussie filmmakers, and I'm working with several writers for that, because that is a project that will be a multitude of writers and directors are going to contribute to. So yes, that's the writing that I'm doing is kind of in that world. The feature film that I'm supposed to be directing next is being written by a much better writer than I am. So I'm working with him, but letting him take the lead on all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know you've got some irons in the fire, and you probably can't talk about them really, but I mean, I think it's great that we're going to see another Jamie Blanks horror movie or two.
You will. and it's
Or
going to be
3.
soon. You know, it's not going to be far away if everything goes to plan. My deal's still being discussed for that picture, but if all goes to plan, yeah, that'll be relatively soon. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and again, you know, Jamie is one of the good guys. He's one of us. He loves this genre. So when you see his name on something, support it, because you're supporting one of us.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. So you know, hopefully very soon there'll be some announcements, and we'll have Jamie right back on and talk about you know, all of his upcoming projects that we definitely need to.
I'll be coming straight to you, Justin, because as you know, this project directly resulted through me being on your channel. Let's leave it at that.
Very cool.
That's how they got in touch with me. They found me through you. So yeah, pretty wild.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we've been going for over 2 hours. It doesn't feel that way. We've talked about a lot of cool stuff. And if anybody has any last minute questions, or if you want to jump on, that link is still available. But Jamie, thank you so much for hanging out. Like I said, it's always a pleasure to just shoot the bull with you and talk horror. And I always feel like, you know, when we do one of these, I get to know you a little more and a little better. And again, when I say that you're one of the good guys, I'm not blowing smoke. I really mean it. You're one of the good guys. Oh,
thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
that's really kind of you. And I'm hoping my buddy Todd Farmer's okay in LA with the earthquake. I'm concerned that anything's happened to his house or his property or his family. He says we're all good here.
Yeah, we're good here. Some glass fell and exploded, but no worries. Wow. No worries. That's Australian.
Be safe, Todd. Be safe, my friend.
Yeah. Oh man. But all right. Well, let's go ahead and call it a night here. We've had a lot of fun tonight. Like I said, it's been great. Let me give some shout outs here. Big shout out to my buddy Turi for the $20 super chat. Appreciate that, sir. Shout out to Pablo Papano for the $5 super chat, and shout out to Michael Piatowski for the 10 Australian super chat. Thank you. Appreciate that, sir. And let's see who's still with us tonight. There's Sasha in the chat, Shannon, Sean, CTS, Nico.
Hey, Shannon, thanks for all the lovely, kind words on Twitter and on the stream here. You're so kind. Thank you.
Yeah, Shannon's a wonderful person.
Been amazing.
Yeah. Of course, Todd's been in the chat all night. Thanks for hanging out with us, Todd. That was great. Mr. Boone, Magic Pumpkin, Sean Senior, Jess, who was on here briefly. So thanks for joining us tonight, man. That was very cool. Verisimilitude, Robert Long. Let's see. There's Michael in the chat. How's it going, buddy? Jose Molinas. Jose would like to know, what's your favorite Spanish horror movie? You got a favorite Spanish horror movie?
Can I classify Pieces as a Spanish horror film? I think I can.
That would be my favorite one too.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Pieces on that one.
I want to see a novelization for Pieces.
And what about the one Who Can Kill a Child? Is that Spanish? I think that's Spanish.
That might be.
I think if that's a Spanish movie, then that's my number 2. Okay. I really like those two.
Let's see. Justin Murad was with us tonight. My buddy Big Crack Rock was with us tonight. Kay was with us. Dave Vanderhoff from over in Jersey. Yeah, we had a fun night, definitely. Thank you again so much, Jamie. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, brother, anytime. I'm looking forward to coming back. We're going to have a stream, I think, in October with Mike Thorne, my really good friend, author Mike Thorne. So I'm really looking forward to doing that at some stage, because his new book just got he announced it on Twitter this morning. His new book's called Peel Back and See, and it's amazing. I've read the book, and yeah, he's a huge talent. Mike and I are trying to get some films going together. So yeah, I'm a huge fan. I'm really supportive of Mike, and it'd be fun to have a little chat with him on your channel at some stage, Justin.
Yeah. I've kind of, I think we've bonded on Twitter over our mutual love of everything Toby Hooper. So that could definitely be something we discussed during that stream. So keep your eyes peeled for that stream. We're going to have that scheduled sometime in October with Author Mike
Yeah,
Thorne.
awesome.
So
I can't wait.
that'll be cool. Yeah. All right. Well, you all have a yeah.
I was going to say thank you, man. Thank you for the lovely chat, and just thanks for having me get on your channel again. It's so kind of you. I really love being on here and love interacting with everyone. And you're one of the good guys, brother. And I'll anytime you want me, you got me.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And again, thank you to everybody who tuned in.
No worries.
Have a great weekend. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the very near future. Peace.
Bye.